Thank you, and hello, everyone. I'm Nikolay, and I work for the monitoring team at CERN, where I'm also responsible for the visualization tools, and in particular for Grafana. I'm pretty sure most of you have heard about CERN, or at least the Large Hadron Collider, but I would like to start with a quick introduction, and later on, I'm going to talk about the monitoring service and the way we use Grafana and Mimir. So CERN is the biggest particle physics laboratory in the world. And our goal is to understand the most fundamental particles and laws of the universe. It is located in the Geneva area, and the accelerators are actually crossing across the Franco-Swiss border. It was founded 70 years ago by 11 European countries, and the number of member states has grown since. Currently, we have 23 countries as a member states, and we have also many associate states. But in general, CERN collaborates with more than 80 different countries in different experiments. It is the home of LHC, the Large Hadron Collider, that is the biggest collider ever built. It is 27 kilometers in circumference, and is located around 100 meters underground. And it is built with superconducting magnets that are used to accelerate the particles with the speed close to the speed of light. So as this is collider, actually we have two beamlines, and particles are accelerated in opposite directions. And the experiments actually happen in 4 detectors. So in the background, you can see one of our detectors. There, both beamlines, they cross each other and create more than 1 billion collisions per second. Of course, we cannot analyze so much data. So that's why there is a special triggering system that filters out only 200 interesting events out of this 1 billion. So only these 200 events combined for the 4 detectors turned into data, make 25 gigabytes of data per second. And we need to archive this data somewhere. And this is where our data centers, they come into place. So currently we have 2 data centers where we permanently archive around 380 petabytes of data, mainly on tapes, but also on disks. In the data centers, we have around 11,000 servers with almost 500,000 processor cores. And maybe you can ask yourself, okay, but how all the physicists actually access this data, and how do they perform analysis on this data? And this is the reason CERN created WLCG, that is the world's biggest computing grid, combining effort and resources from 170 institutes and universities from all around the world, and providing there around 12,000 physicists with the opportunity to analyze this data using around 1.4 million of computing cores. So, of course, such infrastructure requires monitoring, and this is where the monitoring service at CERN comes into place. With our main mandate to monitor the data center, WLCG, but also the other services that are running in our IT department. So currently, we monitor around 15,000 hosts and receive around 85,000 of documents every second. So turned into data, this is around 3.3 terabytes of data we store every day. And we receive data not only from the hosts, but also from around 200 different data producers. You may be spotted already 5,000 users up there. A bit more than 5,000 users actually is the number of users, unique users, that used our Grafana instance in the last year. And so having such wide range of services to monitor, of course, provides some challenges for us. The first one is that we get data from the heterogeneous data sources. And we need to actually unify the way we get this data so that we can cope with this. First, we require that the data is sent to us as a JSON format, because we cannot deal with many different formats. We don't know actually what these producers might be using on their site. And secondly, we need to identify who sends the data to us so that we can store it in the required way and also provide them with the easy way to access it through Grafana data sources, for instance. Secondly, we need to provide a fault-tolerant infrastructure. So the expectation is that actually our infrastructure is almost running all the time. In order to do this, we built a data processing pipeline with the different layers, and we try to replicate at each layer the servers in different availability zones. And last but not least, it should be scalable infrastructure. It should be able to accept and to get, of course, more hosts and more producers. But also, it should be easily adaptable to new use cases. And we came up with this architecture. It was a long time ago, around 2016. Of course, it has evolved a little bit over the years, but it has been this in general. Where in our ingestion layer we are running Flume, we are either receiving data or we are pulling data from different user systems. Then Flume is sending data forward to our transport that is served by Kafka, providing 3 days of buffer. We profit from the Kafka streaming functionality, so we do some stream or batch processing, mainly using Spark, but also Logstash for some logs use cases. And then in our export layer, we consume from Kafka, and we write into the different storages that are HDFS, InfluxDB, and OpenSearch. On the visualization side, of course, Grafana is our favorite tool. We also provide access through Swan, that is a CERN service for Jupyter notebooks. So this is for analyzing data that is stored in HDFS. And of course, for the data that is stored in OpenSearch, there is their interface. These are mainly logs, but there are also some metrics there. I'm pretty sure you have noticed Mimir up there. I'm going to talk a little bit more about Mimir later on in the talk. In terms of data types, we receive metrics, logs, and alarms directly from the hosts. On the host, we are running a colleague daemon that is responsible for sending us this information. But we also receive a service and application metrics and logs from around these 200 producers I already mentioned before. For the WLCG, if you're interested, we monitor the data transfers, the jobs that are running there, doing their monitoring, but also accounting. And we monitor what is the availability of the different sites. In terms of alarms, apart from the host alerts, we have a small system that is called no contact, and it is used to check if the hosts are up and running. Otherwise, it is sending alert. And we have also external alarm sources. So the same way we receive metrics through JSON, we can also receive alerts. And this we use also to integrate Grafana alerts through webhook, so that we receive all the alerts generated in Grafana and store them within the monitoring service. On the processing side, I mentioned already we are running mainly Spark jobs. With them, we are aggregating the data for long-term storage. So if it's highly granular data, we want to reduce the granularity. And also for WLCG, for instance, we are doing a lot of enrichment. If we get a metric for a given host, we just need to add extra information about what is the topology of this host, to which site, country, cloud it belongs to. So all this we do in the streaming jobs on the fly. So that was the introduction of the monitoring service. Now I'm going to turn more about our Grafana experience. So it has been with us since the beginning of the architecture I showed before, 2016. And we have been always very happy using Grafana. Also, our users, they love it. Of course, they're creating a lot of dashboards. But we found also that Grafana is quite useful to be used as a unified data source. You know, Grafana provides a proxy, and now with the newer versions, already a DS API. So we have some systems actually that are accessing data from Grafana data sources through the Grafana APIs. It is quite useful because actually it hides the complexity of the different databases that are behind the data sources. It is also very useful, of course, and Grafana is used a lot for alerting tool in our infrastructure. And as I mentioned already, we integrated through a webhook with monitoring service. So that's what we call on our site CERN GNI. So it's a kind of notification service we are running within our service. In terms of numbers, I mentioned 5,000, a bit more than 5,000 users. We had unique logins in the last year. In 30 days period, this is 1,200, and this is more or less the constant number of users that are using Grafana. 70 organizations, a bit more than 2,700 dashboards, and 680 alerts. So these are the numbers we have currently in our Grafana deployment. Our main Grafana instance is actually, as I mentioned already, multi-organization instance, and it is behind a CERN single sign-on. So it requires authentication. It requires to be a CERN user so that you can access it. The way we deploy, we are using a virtual machines, Alma Linux currently, and we deployed them behind a DNS load balancer in OpenStack that we are running at CERN. So they're split in 3 different availability zones, of course, so that it can guarantee us that in case we have some issue in a given availability zone, Grafana is still going to be up and running. And for database, we are using a PostgreSQL. We have a second instance that is Monit Grafana Open, and the difference is that this is a public instance. It is a single organization. It's a public instance. It does not require any authentication. So it is completely open to the world. And the reason we have it is that we have some dashboards we want to share publicly with anyone who wants to access, actually. It's a very simple deployment. We deploy on 2 virtual machines, again, in different availability zones. We don't need anything more because it is quite stable. It is up and running. And the way it is also organized, it is just a read-only instance that provides access to one of the organizations that we have in the main Grafana. So it is using the same database underneath, actually. And this is just one dashboard I wanted to show you that we have about the WLCG site availability. Another one is the OpenStack overview. Actually, this one is accessible through the public instance, and it is created by our OpenStack colleagues, showing the overview of their service. And having so many users in Grafana and dashboards, of course, provide some operational challenges for us. So the first one is that we need to manage the organizations. So they request us to create new organizations. They might be public or private. We support these 2 types currently. Public organizations means that all the Grafana users, they need to have access to this organization. So we are running some scripts in order to synchronize them regularly. And the private ones, they're mainly used by the service manager. So they decide on their own who should get access to their own organization. Then we have a plugin management. So at CERN, you can imagine there are many physicists that are looking into monitoring data, decide to create some plugins. And this happened more in the past, not so much in the last years, because Grafana became more and more complete product. And we are getting anything that we need almost out of the box. But we still have some legacy plugins that we need to maintain. We need to make sure that updating to newer version, the things are not going to break. We still have some small patches to apply, even though we already managed to contribute many things upstream. So even in the Michaela's presentations earlier today, I saw that she highlighted one of the transformations was table to matrix. This was actually transformation contributed by us to Grafana. But yes, we really need to make sure that updating to a new version is not going to break anything for our users. So this is a challenge for us. But the biggest challenge actually we had with migration to the unified alerting framework that we completed last year. But actually, the process we started already with version 8 when unified alerting was introduced for the very first time. So we expected that with this change of concept and moving into the alert manager-like concept is going to create a hype, of course, and it did. And more people are going to create alerts in Grafana. So having most of the monitoring data in InfluxDB, we wanted to make sure that there's not going to be overloaded database. We wanted to make sure that we understand what is going to be the impact to the databases from the having more alerts created, and of course, this is going to produce more queries to be executed to the databases. We also evaluated the impact on the hosting servers. We had to re-implement our webhook integration because now the document is an alert manager-like document, so we had to adapt to this. And the last but not least, we migrated actually all the alerts that we had, running in parallel with the legacy alerts, and we were checking if they're going to trigger at the same time, and if they're actually matching the notifications. Once we felt confident enough to go forward with the migration, we organized in multi-steps. So first step was providing our users with the newer version, kind of read-only, just to allow them to get a feeling of the new interface, to allow them to understand how they are going to manage their alerts afterwards, how to configure new alerts. And the second step was actually to migrate the alerts. But once doing this, we did it in production, but we also preserved the legacy alerts in a temporary instance, so that actually there were duplicated notifications, of course, as you can imagine, but this allowed them the time to check if their alerts were migrated correctly, and they were able to go and to deprecate the legacy alerts manually afterwards. And we were very satisfied with the process at the end, and actually I would say the automatic alerting migration worked out of the box. It was pretty good. We did in version 10 already. And the next steps with Grafana we see around alerting. Firstly, because the new unified alerting framework provides a lot of new features. I've already presented to our service managers some tips and tricks, how to use multi-instance alerting, how to play with silences, mute intervals, how to create custom annotations and labels. And I think there is much more room of improvement on that end. Then alert history overview was a feature that was requested by our service managers for a very, very long time. And it came available in version 10. We have not adapted yet, but we are looking forward. It requires a locky backend, and we are going to provide one so that we can make the feature working. And the last but not least, the public dashboards. As you can imagine, having public dashboards and providing the users with the functionality to share dashboards publicly will allow us to deprecate and to get rid of the open instance that we are running currently. So this is going to be of great benefit for us, just one less instance to maintain. And also, in many cases, we have dashboards that are duplicated in two organizations just because we want to make them public. So we are really looking forward to provide this to our users. Now, switching a little bit from Grafana to Mimir. As you saw our architecture at the beginning, it was clear that the Prometheus path was missing a bit. And we identified this. There were requests from our users to integrate a long-term storage for Prometheus metrics. We started working on this. And 2020, we came up with the integration that we made on our own using InfluxDB for a backend. But it was clear that it is not going to scale very, very well in the future. So that's why we started looking into what tools are available on the market. And of course, Cortex catch our attention. Also, one of the reasons was that we saw a strong Grafana community behind Cortex, so this gave us extra confidence. Later on, this turned to become a Mimir. So we switched into the Mimir, of course, and tested how this would scale in our use case. So for our test case, we had 80 million of active series. So we played a little bit. It took some time, of course, to make it working properly. But at the end, it ended up to scale quite good. So we were very happy with the result. Also, like the fact that you can scale at a different component, either at the ingester side or the query side. Mimir also provides a lot of flexibility. with multi-tenancy, getting data from different users. So this would also allow us to integrate all the data into the single storage. And that's why we decided to start a pilot service, 2023, running on Kubernetes, of course, our deployment with multi-masters and nodes split in different availability zones. We have also different node groups. The reason is behind, of course, the different requirements that we get from the components in terms of hardware. Some require more memory, others more processor. And S3 as a storage with a default retention of 40 days. And these are the numbers we get currently. The cluster is around 50, 49 to be exact. Nodes, of course, there are 3 masters there. So we have 46 worker nodes, providing a bit more than 1.2 terabytes of memory and 730 cores. And currently, we have 29 tenants producing 30 million of active series. But our calculation is that on this cluster, we can accommodate 150 million of active series and being able to process around 2,000 queries per second. This is a dashboard we are using for our Kubernetes cluster monitoring. You can see actually how much of this it is used currently for this 30 million of active series. And here we have just a tiny part of our Mimir monitoring dashboard. Of course, it is a big one. Could not get it on the screenshot. But down there on the right side, you can see that actually it's 30 million is the active series currently. OK, so what is next for the monitoring service at CERN? So being satisfied with the results we have with Mimir, and also our clients being very satisfied with what we can provide, we plan integrating Mimir into the standard monitoring pipeline. So this will allow us also to reduce the risk of data loss, having Kafka in front. So in case Mimir is not available for some time, or in case there is some data that is lost in an ingestion, for instance, even though we are doing replication, we can consume the data back from Kafka and we can recover. It will also allow us to integrate data from other that are non-Prometheus data sources. Currently, of course, we cannot do this having a JSON format, so we need to look into OTLP. And to adapt OTLP, we can use the OpenTelemetry collector. And we plan to replace the Flume in our architecture with the OpenTelemetry collector. That scales also quite well horizontally. And having OTLP format within the infrastructure, of course, this also opens the door for tracing. So we are not offering tracing currently, but we are looking into it. And knowing the similarities between Mimir and Tempo, of course, Tempo is very high on our list for tracing offering. And this is the architecture actually that we plan to have in the next couple of months and the next year probably. At latest, replacing the Flume with OpenTelemetry collector, as you can see. Then OTLP also becomes a standard format within the infrastructure. We also plan providing our users with a tiny Fluentbit agent so that they can use it on their hosts and then send metrics, logs, and traces through OTLP format to our ingestion layer. And now, you have probably noticed, Mimir is well integrated within the pipeline. So just to summarize, Grafana is a crucial tool for the monitoring service at CERN. Of course, providing us with many useful dashboards, but also with alerting functionality. Mimir provides the missing bit in our Prometheus architecture. And we are going to use OpenTelemetry that will allow us to unify the observability patterns. Thank you very much.